Welcome to Diagnosing Dx, the podcast giving diagnostics the platform it deserves. While therapeutics and devices often take centre stage, diagnostics is the engine driving precision medicine. I'm your host, David Filby, and each week we spotlight the innovators, breakthroughs, and real-world challenges shaping the future of DX. Today I'm joined by Dr. Bharat Tewarie, CEO of Helio Genomics, a company using AI-powered multiomics to transform liver cancer detection. We discuss why today's standard of care is no longer good enough, why commercial success in diagnostics depends on much more than great science, and how partnerships, clinical workflow, and patient access are becoming the real competitive advantage. If you're building or investing in diagnostics, this episode is packed with lessons on both innovation and commercialization. Welcome to the show this week, Bharat. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you, David.
Fantastic. Where in the world are you? It looks very sunny.
I am in sunny Boston, and it sounds very strange, of course, those two words together, right?
Yeah, there you go. This is the time of year to be in Boston, right?
Exactly. That's true. So true. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. We've got a really exciting topic, obviously, to go through with Helio, but also your own story. And Helio are getting a lot of press at the moment and some fantastic updates, which I'm really excited to dig into further. But before we do that, it'd be great to sort of get an introduction to yourself and your background and your journey onto Helio Genomics.
Yes, thanks, David, and hello to everyone. Thanks, David, for having me. I am Dr. Bharat Tewarie, the CEO of Helio Genomics. I'm a medical doctor by training, and I also acquired an MBA later on. I have decades of experience when it comes to global healthcare leadership in pharma, biotech, digital health. And throughout my career, I have been driven by one goal, and that is turning the innovation, the innovative science into something which has real world impact for patients. And that is exactly what makes this role at Helio Genomics so meaningful for me, because it brings earlier cancer detection really within reach. And, if I just give a summary of my path to Helio, I have been working for remarkable organizations in many leadership roles. I work for a multinational companies such as Boehringer Ingelheim, at Roche. I was at EMD Serono, later on acquired by Merck. I was an EVP and Chief Marketing Officer at UCB. And from there, I sacked into, leading startups and then founding also consultancy on the way to be able to then hone also my entrepreneurial skills. And when I reflect on what these roles have taught me is how to bridge science, business, and real-world impact across pharma, biotech, diagnostic, medical devices, and digital health. What is important for Helio and what I'm bringing to the table, of course, is the ability to have launched and have hands-on experience when it comes to bringing products to market on both sides of the ocean. And all of that experience from big operations to working in very nimble teams, I'm, of course, taking along as the CEO of Helio Genomics. And I came to Helio Genomics just at the time when Helio was getting ready or preparing itself for a commercial launch.
Is that what attracted you to Helio at this point? Was the fact that there was this commercial launch on the horizon, or what was it exactly that, because of your background, it's a really interesting background, isn't it, to bring to a company like Helio, but what was it that really attracted you to them at this point?
What is very interesting is that what has shaped me, of course, throughout my journey and what brought me then to Helio is that I'm a physician, which means that I always have a patient-first mindset. You have seen suffering up close, and it never leaves you. So patients first always. And then transitioning to the commercial side after my MBA was a pivotal shift, because now I was able to influence healthcare on a very large scale, not just one patient at a time. And then I learned how partnerships can multiply impact, how to integrate science, data, and strategies without silos. So all of this actually is what you need to be successful at Helio. You need to bring this all to the table so that this journey that I had of blending clinical insight with strategic execution, that journey which led me to Helio, is spot on, because we have this ability at Helio Genomics to truly change lives through earlier detection.
That makes sense. You went to do an MBA. Was
Yes.
that something that at that point in your career was like, was it really obvious to you that you wanted to do that or needed to do that to continue like on your journey and what you were motivated by?
Yes, it was very clear to me that after having done my MD, I had roles within big pharma, in medical affairs and clinical research. But when I really wanted to have this impact at scale, I need to be grounded in the thinking of business. And I want to do an MBA because you see, thinking drives action and action drives impact. So I wanted to make sure that that kind of thinking, right, that ability to look at problems, challenges, and how to solve it from different angles, that I had that business angle too.
Yeah, interesting. So you've got a really unique perspective, right? Because it's not like you've been PhD scientist developing an early stage diagnostic test and then grown your career in diagnostics. You've really come from a rich
hmm
pharma, like great company names, and navigated those, those corporate structures as well. What was your impression of diagnostics, omics in the past and the evolution of that to where it is today?
hmm You know, liver cancer, which is the disease area that Helio's in, is actually a great backdrop for the answer to your question. When you step back and you look at liver cancer surveillance, the reality is striking. For years, when you look at the diagnoses which are there, we have been asking one of the most vulnerable patient population to rely on tools, the diagnosis that we have today, that simply actually are not built for the level of precision that we need and we want today. The standard approach, an abdominal ultrasound every 6 months, sometimes paired with AFP, is an important start. Today, it's no longer enough. Why do I say that? This diagnostic, right, ultrasound imaging can be very inconsistent. It is very operator dependent and far too likely to miss the small tumors that matter most. The ones that I say we need to catch early when patients still have a chance for a cure. And in the real world, adherence is also a major challenge, and surveillance. Today, right, surveillance depends on repeating imaging, which is very inconvenient, time consuming, difficult to access. So what happens then in the end? Too many patients fall through the crack. And then when you add in factors which are important in liver cancer, like obesity and advanced liver disease, where imaging becomes even less reliable, you begin to see what I call the real problem. Right? It's not only a technology gap, because ultrasound is more than 4 decades old, it's also a system gap now. And that's exactly when you then move to the advanced diagnostic, you shift to AI-powered multiomics. That's when it gets so exciting, because instead of depending on one limited snapshot, we can now bring together multiple layers of biology, DNA methylation patterns, protein biomarkers, and clinical context. And all of this, we bring it together, and then we let advanced machine learning detect signals that would otherwise stay hidden. And this ability to detect signals that otherwise stay hidden changes the game. What you get is greater sensitivity, early detection, and a much more scalable path to precision care. So you see how we have moved from the diagnostics, like ultrasound imaging, to HelioLiver now. And this test addresses a lot of critical gaps that we have today in current surveillance methods. And it offers, and we may talk later about it, superior sensitivity to ultrasound, especially for early stage detection in populations, right? In patients who are at high risk for liver cancer.
All right, you sound excited about the future of early detection and diagnosis. That, I mean, unfortunately, that's one of the things missing in the industry is a healthy amount of optimism. And is AI a crucial part of that? Is it all coming together now to create this precision medicine future that we should all be excited and optimistic about?
Absolutely, I would say. What you see is that, especially in this area, you see that AI-powered multiomics, AI-powered tests are being added to the current tools that we have for precise blood-based early detection. And in our case, for the early detection of liver cancer. Think again, right? You have imaging for which you need appointment, it's inconvenient, and now you have a simple blood draw. Something far easier for patients to complete consistently. And so what you get is not only better science, but you also get an ability to understand what makes things more convenient for a patient. So we can build what I call a smarter, more practical, actually a more human-centric model of care. And at Helio, we see this as a true leap forward, where you move from reactive medicine where cancer is found too late to very proactive medicine, where we have a real opportunity to intervene earlier, improve outcomes, and in the end, save more lives.
Yeah, great. So that leads us really nicely into who Helio Genomics, the mission, platform, differentiators that you guys are bringing.
Yeah, Helio Genomics is a tech bio company founded in 2016, and we actually operate at the intersection of AI, advanced biology, and multiomics data. We have our commercial headquarters in Irvine, California, and a CLIA certified commercial and R&D lab in West Lafayette, Indiana. Today, our mission is very clear. We want to save lives by detecting cancer earlier through simple, in this case, blood draw, because that's what our lead product is exactly doing. And this mission really matters because when I look at HelioLiver for liver cancer, right, timing changes everything. The earlier you detect it, the greater the chance to intervene when a disease is still treatable and potentially curable. With HelioLiver, which is our lead product or flagship product that we have today, Helio is able to help patients at risk not to rely on a single signal, but we combine all those signals together to create something which truly can move the needle.
So what is the unmet need then? Because you mentioned obviously the ultrasound side of the current state of affairs, current standard of care, and how long that's been used for. But within liver cancer surveillance, what is that unmet need, and how big is it in say North America?
You know, liver cancer is emerging as a silent epidemic in the US, very often going undetected until very advanced stages. And that's because there are no early symptoms. It today ranks among the fastest rising causes of cancer-related deaths. And when you look at incidence rates, they have been tripling. Mortality has been doubling since 1980. When you can identify this early on, the 5-year survival would be 70% or higher. High-risk patients today, and those are patients defined as having cirrhosis or hepatitis B, are supposed to get screened twice a year. Yet most early cancers still hide. Ultrasound, which is today the standard of care, the technology which is more than 4 decades old, right, misses too many of liver cancer. And although the guidelines recommend ultrasound and you know, with AFP, real performance is very poor. 80 to 90% of eligible adults skip the recommended ultrasounds because it's inconvenient. There are issues with access and many other barriers. HelioLiver overcomes all these challenges because first it's blood-based, right? We facilitate in very early detection when curative treatments are still very effective. Now, this is the data that we bring to the table, right? What we need to make sure is this data that we can bring to the table leads to decisions to start using it so that we can detect patients at risk at earlier stages.
So there's a massive uptick then on education and awareness, as well as the quality of the test. It's actually that people are skipping it because maybe they don't want to go get an ultrasound, and they aren't even aware that these types of tests exist.
Yeah, correct. Awareness is a big thing. And let's not forget there are many areas like in rural America where access is a problem. Getting access to imaging center, that in itself becomes a very logistic issue. You know, building awareness, a very important thing, and you touch of that. And what is important is that we take the scientific data that we have today. We have done a study called CLIMB, where we have been proving how HelioLiver compares to the standard of care ultrasound, and we were able to show our superiority. But that is one thing, right? The scientific validation. Now we have to make sure that we have as many real patient stories to show how detection can dramatically change outcomes, and we make providers and patients aware. So for providers, making them aware is actually focusing on very practical solution, not only educating them about the studies we did and the scientific data, but making them also aware that it's easy to order the test, that we provide very clear reports, and that we keep sharing case examples where HelioLiver was able to catch cancers where ultrasound had actually missed it. So what we are trying to do is addressing the adherence gap head on by positioning our flagship product, HelioLiver, as a simple, reliable blood draw that fits into routine care. Because we not only have to work on a physician experience, we also have to work on a practice experience. There is a certain routine that they have when they care for their patients. And HelioLiver fits perfectly in that routine care. And the other thing what we actually are saying is you don't have to rely on operator-dependent imaging anymore that many patients anyway are skipping. For patients, building awareness is all about clear messages and making sure that they understand that one simple blood draw can give them answers when it really matters most. So we are shifting the conversation from reactive late-stage care to very proactive surveillance so that Helio can actually make early detection the new goal and assuring that what we are talking about, right? The fact that every high-risk individual should actually go and get their test. We want to make sure that every one of these high-risk individual knows what the options are and feels confident to ask them for a better screening.
It sounds like you've put a real emphasis on the clinical workflow, right? And ensuring that this is easy to use and therefore will be picked up without too much disruption. Was that a key part of the development of the product, but also within the CLIMB study and how you would utilize that to enable sort of physicians to want to adopt the test?
Yeah, there are two parts here. The CLIMB study, of course, in itself, and maybe we can dive deeper into that, was of course a clinical study where there is a certain protocol, and we work with, many of the leading centers in the United States.
Yeah.
Real world, real life, when you have a practice with its standard operating procedures, its workflow, is another thing. And for commercialization, it's very important that once you have validated the science and you make people aware of what the results are of science, like our CLIMB study, that you also make people aware how HelioLiver fits in the workflow. So we studied that also in the pre-launch. What would it take to make HelioLiver fit in the workflow so that the practice experience would also be optimal in addition to the physician and the patient experience. Right? Practice experience is very important because in the end, workflow actually determines how easy the prescription will travel through the system. And we learned a lot, right? We learned, for instance, that we need connectivity to IT systems. We learned that we need to bring more patient blood draw centers to the table. So to make life easy for the patients, also easy for the practice to be able to advise the patients where their blood can be drawn, either in their own clinic or if the patient wants it closer home, somewhere else. And that's where partnering became important to make sure that we can help with all of this.
I think it's great to hear because I think it's refreshing that we unfortunately in this industry, there's a graveyard of great tests, great science that they never considered clinical workflows and how easy it would be to bring this test into the real world. And that's where things fail, especially when early stage founders maybe have some naivety or a lack of experience in bringing new products through. They think that the science is going to be enough, and then they get this punch in the face when it's time to commercialize, and nobody wants to change their standard operating procedures, or patients don't want to go and take that test for a lack of education and awareness. So it's great to hear that this has become a huge part and a huge emphasis of what you guys are trying to do.
Yeah.
And so you just mentioned partnerships as a big part of the Helio story. How does that come into it? Because it's a word that we hear a lot in the industry, but I think it's a flip of a coin. Half the industry are obsessed about partnerships and see the value of them, and the other half are ignoring them and sort of. I'll give my opinion later on why, but what's the emphasis on partnerships for Helio?
So let's go back. At some stage, Helio Genomics or any company which is moving in the direction that we are will have their science validated. You have done the study, you have your test, and the science is there. But are you there as a company? Have you helped the patients? Not yet. you need to go from this scientific validation to clinical adoption. That's a part of the workflow that the doctors do prescribe it, that patient can ask for it, and the experience of a practice of making this all happen works now. In between, you need to build what I call an infrastructure, a commercial highway to go from the scientific validation to the adoption. And there are several elements that you need to bring to the table, right? You need to bring to the table the ability to build a physician experience, a patient experience, a practice experience. You need to have the ability to connect to IT systems. How will this all work? You need to have the ability to have capabilities to actually go and make people aware, boots on the ground. You need to have a publication strategy, a conference strategy. So there's so much which you need to put in place to go from scientific validation to this adoption. And then as a CEO, of course, right, you have choices like you buy, you build, or you borrow.
Yeah.
Right? Now you could build it yourself. It would take a lot of capital, a lot of time. And when it comes to scaling fast, you need to have the capabilities, and in this case, it means the experience and expertise to be able to do this. And here's where partnerships are a phenomenal way to actually do this scaling not only faster, but to de-risk it also. Because if you work with partners who have been doing this and have the expertise and the experience, you can take the risk out of commercialization out, and now it becomes just logistics. So partnering for me is a major leap forward in our commercial strategy, and it de-risks the path to a broad market adoption for HelioLiver. And that's why we have in the past months, in the first half of 26, we have partnered with a lot of companies, and you will have seen, of people who are following the journey of Helio Genomics will have seen the press releases and the LinkedIn messages, about how we are going to work with all these partners.
Why do you think and this is great for coming from your perspective as someone who's come into this industry from an adjacent and obviously very relevant industry. Why do you think the diagnostics and omics industry doesn't always necessarily see partnerships the way you see it and the way Helio are developing partnerships?
I can't speak for all the colleagues out there. It is, of course, difficult, right? You have to have experience, not only to build the partnership, but to manage the alliance that you have built. That requires, it's a certain ability. You also have to always make sure, why is it that you want to build this partnership? What part of the commercial infrastructure, the highway that you build from scientific validation to adoption, which part do you actually want to fulfill with that partnership? If you look at the partners that we have today, right? Quest Diagnostics, right, is helping us in a tremendous way. They serve half of the physician and hospitals in the US, right? 1 in 3 American adults actually are familiar with Quest. And starting in April, the healthcare providers with a Quest account can order the HelioLiver test through Quest's extensive network, which is phenomenal, right? You just get a Quest order number. And patients can have their blood drawn at approximately, 7,700 patient service centers across the US. So this dramatically expands, of course, reach and convenience. The partnership also gives us this seamless connectivity that we needed to all the electronic health record systems that you have in the US, so that ordering and result delivery is smooth and integrated in an existing clinical workflow. So this is a very important aspect that Quest brings to the table. We also partnered with another large commercial entity called Syneos Health, and that we did for nationwide provider engagement, field execution, and marketing support. Because of this collaboration, we have been able to strengthen Helio's ability to build and expand physician and patient awareness and engagement throughout the US. Syneos is commercialization expertise and the deployment capabilities that we have will help HelioLiver to penetrate much more efficiently, much faster in the US market, because they are bringing decades of experience in successfully building, executing a lot of commercial programs, especially in the area that we are focused on. These are just two of the partners. We also partnered with Microsoft And with Microsoft, we are actually trying to help underserved communities in rural America where the barriers still are there when it comes to routine surveillance and preventive care. Because one of the biggest healthcare challenges in the US is sometimes not a lack of innovation, it's making sure that the innovations that we have can reach every patient regardless of geography. And and I have been repeating this many times in this conversation, right? Early detection matters, but it only matters if a patient can actually access it. So this Microsoft Rural Health Transformation Collaborative, which they had created, is bringing a lot of leaders together across healthcare, AI diagnostics, digital infrastructure, retail health, and community care, because the intent is to strengthen healthcare access in these rural communities. And what is Helio contributing in this collaborative? Well, we are actually helping with HelioLiver to bring a very scalable blood-based surveillance test for early liver cancer detection in these underserved areas. Because, for patients in rural America, this collaboration truly means hope, real accessible hope.
It makes so much sense, especially just the sheer distribution and access that you're trying to achieve. Do
Mhm.
those partnerships also help with the awareness side of things with regards to liver cancer specifically and early detection?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. All of this, of course, because you keep talking about the test, the background of the test, why we are doing it. And we have a special awareness program we are building together with Cineus for physicians and patients. We also have partnered with an entity called LiverRight. And LiverRight is an entity which is basically nation's first and only national virtual clinic focused on liver disease. And they are serving adult patients via telemedicine in all 50 states. So they are trying to actually also contribute to get patients seen as quickly as possible so that they are also contributing to earlier diagnosis. And we have partnered with them too.
Fantastic. And so what does commercialization look from this point moving forward, and what does the sort of growth strategy look like under the new leadership?
Well, what it is all about, of course, is going from scientific validation to commercial adoption, building the awareness, physicians, patients, assuring that the practice understand how this fits in their workflow, making sure that people are aware that there is now an option for earlier liver cancer detection, an option which allows them actually to start treatment much earlier where cure still could be a possibility. So that is one big thing. And then, of course, is looking into the future. We also are evaluating which other tests we can develop in the future for the same target audience. And we have a platform which can detect many other cancers. So this is also what we are evaluating.
To further development and new product lines in the future.
Yes.
And what are the sort of upcoming milestones that people who want to follow the Helio story, what are the milestones we should be looking out for over the sort of next 12, 24 months?
Well, the first one is, of course, is the penetration of HelioLiver, the awareness about when you are at risk, when you have cirrhosis or hepatitis B, you should be tested twice a year. And HelioLiver is one of the possibilities, a blood-based convenience test, which can help detect liver cancer at the stage that it still can be cured. So that's one. The second thing is we are going further when it comes to product development to now see moving from early diagnostics, if and when we can develop tests to show, for instance, whether liver cancer after the doctors have been giving you a liver transplant, if it comes back again, if there is recurrence. So it's another test that we can develop, or helping with prognosis of the disease itself. So these are a few examples of other tests that we at the moment are evaluating when it comes to the further development.
Fantastic. Fantastic to hear. And Bharat, what's your opinion on where we are as an industry at the moment and the future of diagnostics and omics and AI, bio, and everything in between?
I think looking ahead to 26 and beyond, that AI-powered multiomics, that we have the ability to reshape, right, the industry, the ability to now actually show that AI true power is to help patient. In our case, detect cancer much earlier, where you can still do something about it. Right. Early detection today is our strongest weapon against liver cancer. And our flagship product, HelioLiver, gives patients a real fighting chance by catching it sooner. Of course, it's very important to understand that early detection only matters if patient can actually access it. What is important, therefore, is to understand that Helio Genomics is at this very moment leading the way when it comes to early cancer detection.
Awesome. It's great to hear the Helio Genomics story, specific conditions, earlier detection, greater access, and an urgency to get this out to patients as quickly as possible, and partnering with great companies to do that. It all comes across really optimistically and exciting, and I think this is what the industry needs. We need stories like Helio that we should all be getting behind, and we should want to see you succeed. But it's fantastic to hear, and we really appreciate you coming on to tell the story.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bharat, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, David. All the best.